Thank you for joining me for another Quick Hits conversation. I'm Dr. Robyn. With me today, I have Michael Davis. He's the founder at Speaking CPR, where he helps business leaders and speakers improve their presentations and speeches. I have Chris Sturgeon. He's a commercial real estate for 30 years in New Jersey, focusing on creating spaces for small businesses. And I have Dr. Kryn McClain. She's the president and co-founder of Paragon Behavioral Health Services, where they offer mental health and autism therapy. The question I have for the three of you today: how do you provoke thinking outside of the box or creative thinking? Michael, can you kick us off?
I love the timing of this question, Dr. Robyn, because I happen to be in a LinkedIn pod. If your viewers aren't familiar with that, it's a group of us who get together and comment on each other's posts. Three of the people in there focus on innovation and creativity. Oh. One comes from a humorous background. He's a comedian. Another was in improv and works with companies on creative thinking through improv. And the other is a speaker whose focus is innovation. So my first tip is to get around people who think innovatively.
Okay, Chris, that's one. Go ahead, Chris, you're next.
Well, I kind of did a bit of research on the subject. The way I've always addressed thinking outside the box and being creative is looking at the problem and trying to see why isn't the traditional solution that we use not working, and then going backwards and going through all the assumptions that you make and revisiting all those assumptions and seeing if they actually apply. I know there's loads of things like, breaking habits and, the fear of failure. And there's all these sort of nuances that people throw out there. But I actually do think thinking outside the box is sort of examining what you have and trying to see it from a different perspective. And eventually you'll get to the right thing. But I'm going to give you a quick quiz if I can.
No.
Okay, so if you have a cake and you want 8 slices, but you only have you want 8 pieces of cake, but you only have the ability to make 3 slices, how would you cut that cake? And most people won't be able to give it right off the bat, because you really have to look at the cake and how you can do it. And the easy answer to it is slice number 1 in the middle, take the half that you've cut, put it on top of the other half, slice it again. Now you have 4 pieces. Take that 2 pieces, put it on top of, so you have 4 slices now, and cut it again. And that's not the immediate, because people have this thing that, oh, the cake is delicate because you're making assumptions. And that's how I view it. If I could have explained it easier, I would have.
That was a great visual. I have to throw my soapbox for mental health out there, where I think if we are taking care of our people, and if we're thinking about that basic needs first and making sure people feel really cared for in a safe environment. There's a recent study by Harvard that showed that a lot of people are experiencing mental illness right now in the workforce. So I think if we're not well, we're not even able to think about, hey, how are we going to stack these cakes or something of that nature, if we as leaders or we as business owners or whatever maybe your role is watching this aren't focusing on what could be going outside of work. So if you want to inspire and motivate the team and get people like really caring and really revved up and connecting them with purpose, I think we need to first and foremost take a look at the person as a whole person.
One thing I like to do when it comes to thinking outside the box is try to think like a rookie, be the person who doesn't know. And I think that's one of the hardest things as an expert, is for us to be able to kind of backtrack and say, what is it that I do so much by habit that I assume that everyone knows it? When I ask people that question, that often will help us kind of think in a broader way. But Michael, I want to go back to what you said, is surround yourself with people who think outside the box. How do you make those choices? How do you find those kind of people?
Sometimes you get lucky, but I think if you put your radar out there and you just start looking for people, for example, who post on LinkedIn, you'll see different perspectives and think differently. If I could, Robyn, I want to go back to what you just said, because in my storytelling workshops, I teach people about the concept of the curse of knowledge, which is we put the blinders on, we assume everybody knows what we do, and we communicate to them that way. Stepping back based on your suggestion and looking at how you're communicating with people and saying, does what I see, is it clear to everyone? And the best way to find out is to ask for feedback, but that also forces you to take a fresh look at your topic. And then having people around you that you know are innovative thinkers. They don't have to necessarily be innovative speakers, meaning they don't have to be embedded in that topic. There are innovative people all around us, but I think it's stepping back and asking, how can I look at this differently? And he used a metaphor. Perfect. I teach storytelling, and part of that's metaphors. And we have to think about, stop thinking linearly, stack the cake on top of one another. That's a great image that will stick with me the next time I have a problem. I'll think, oh, do I need to stack the cake here instead of keep it flat?
It's interesting because being in real estate, I get to meet a lot of different business owners, and each industry has its own sort of methodology of dealing with problems. And there are sort of standards in each industry. And the more you expose yourself to other industries, what you could actually learn from that sort of experience is addressing problems now that appear in your industry that didn't exist before, but other industries have already been there and done that. So reading things like the Harvard Business Journal, which are case studies of how businesses have, strategized differently or whatever, I find you can actually find a lot of answers in other industries and copy the ideas to address the problems, because someone's already done it for you. You don't actually have to think too much outside the box.
When I work in different industries, sometimes I might learn something somewhere, and then I'll go to a different industry, a different CEO I'm talking to, and I'll say, oh, I read XYZ, or I heard this thing when talking to somebody else, and it's wholly innovative, and he's never heard that before in his life.
Yeah.
And just because I took it from a different industry.
I've used things from Chipotle in a behavioral healthcare setting. So I think there's certainly little nuggets in any industry. And if you have the ability to translate them into how those ideas can lead to implications or solutions in your business or your industry, yeah, I don't think there's anything new under the sun. Someone's already done it, and it's just a different spin on the same thing.
How do you find time to look for those connecting points, to notice things that are working well in one way and being able to think, how can I apply that somewhere else? How do you create time to think creatively?
I think it's just kind of like the Hulk. I'm always thinking creatively, right? Even when we were making the introductions before we came on, each person on this panel, I'm like, oh, I could see how we could actually integrate their skills into what I've been looking for. That's very interesting. So always just being open and being flexible and knowing what problems you're trying to solve. And,
is it like a mental muscle, Kryn?
Maybe, yeah. Maybe
that you have to sort of exercise?
I would think so. I think you can get better.
I find I do that when I go into another business and they're addressing something that I'm buying. And I think to myself, wouldn't it have been easier to do it this way? It's that mind of mine. I must be a freak, but I kind of think of, ways of improving a service or a product that's sort of innate. It is something that it's like a muscle. You have to play with it.
It's the questions we ask ourselves. We have habitual questions. Every human being is susceptible to the blinders. Well, this has always worked and it's good enough, and there might be a much better solution. Tony Robbins years ago talked about this. Change the quality of the questions we ask ourselves and we'll get better results.
And the question is, do you want something that'll happen to work right now, like stick a Band-Aid on it and that's good enough? Or are you looking for something that is going to grow and get better and be really good for 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road? I think that's a good question to ask ourselves when we're trying to solve a problem or think creatively as well.
I think also we have to be careful to not look for the complex answer, because it's often simple. One that comes to mind is the story of the semi truck that was 18 feet 6 inches tall, tried to go under an 18-foot bridge, got stuck. All these degreed people coming in. How are we going to do this? Got to take the bridge off, top of the bridge, or we going to have to cut the truck? And there was a little boy standing right next to all of them and said, hey, why don't you let the air out of the tires and pull it through? I don't know if it's true or not. It's a great little story, but it's simple.
But that goes back to Robyn's rookie thing.
And I know when I work with clients, sometimes they'll say, well, have you ever worked in my industry? And I've worked in a lot of industries, but sometimes I just say, it might be better for you if I haven't, because then I'm going to ask you those rookie questions and I'm going to make you explain stuff to me that you probably haven't thought about in years, because you only surround yourself who have the expertise. So I think that's another way to think creatively, is bring in somebody who is legitimately a rookie and has no idea and can say, I don't know how this works. Explain it to me. because that's going to make you think outside the box or help you because they're going to ask questions. That is our 10 minutes. I'm going to cut us off there. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me. It's been great fun, and I look forward to speaking to each of you again really soon.